All right, welcome to the second installment of the Unwind Your Mind Skills series brought to you by the Healthy Campus Unit. The Unwind Your Mind Skills series provides a study break with an opportunity to learn skills that can help you connect to different resources and services on campus, connect with other students, and cope better with the stressors of student life. So we are really excited to be joined by some of our practicum students from the Faculty of Nursing this month to talk about how to find reputable health information online. This could not come at a better time as influenza season is right around the corner, and this presentation will ensure that you are getting the best information possible. Did you know that 1/3 of U of A students reported getting their flu shot in 2013? While this is a huge amount of the population here on campus, we want to be able to provide all of you with as much information as we can about how, when, and where to get your flu shot right here on campus. Remember, getting your flu shot can be a form of self-care as you're taking steps to protect your health. So I'm really excited to now introduce you to Sarah, Courtney, and Aaron, students from the Faculty of Nursing, and we're excited to welcome them to talk about their knowledge about influenza and how to navigate all of the health information online. So without further ado, I will pass it over to them.
Awesome. Welcome to the skills series, filtering information on the influenza vaccine. And we're going to be talking mostly about information via the internet. So information is everywhere. People love to talk about vaccines and make posts, and it's on social media, it's on government websites. Sometimes it can be slightly overwhelming.
Okay, so just a bit of an overview for what we're going to go through during the presentation. We're going to start with some tips and tricks. They're not hard and fast rules, but just ways to navigate different websites and decide if they're reputable enough. We're going to go through a bad example as well as a good example. We're going to talk about where to get your influenza shot and why. And by the end of this presentation, you should be able to identify reputable sources to get accurate health information, particularly pertaining to vaccinations, and where to get your influenza shot this season. So for tips and tricks, we came up with a little acronym called DADS. The first D would be domain. So some domains such as .com, .org, and .net can be purchased and used by any individual. However, the domain .edu is reserved for colleges and universities, while .gov denotes a government website. So the last two are usually really credible sources of information. Be careful with the domain .org because .org is usually used by a nonprofit organization, which may have an agenda for persuasion rather than education, as well as just talking about the AHS website, which is a .ca website, but since it is endorsed by the government of Alberta, we would consider it a very reputable source for information. So for A, we have author. Who was it written by and did anyone review it? The fact that an author is willing to stand behind the information presented is a good indication that the information is reliable. Our second D is date. So is it recent information? And by recent, we would consider that to be within the last 5 years, as well as we're going to go to S, which would be sources. So where did they get their information from? Credible websites, books, and scholarly articles should cite the source of the information presented.
Okay, so now I'm going to click a link for us to kind of look at a bad example of a website. Sorry if my mouse works. There we go. So as you can look up here, you can see that it's .org. And if you scroll down, actually, you can see that it states that it is a nonprofit kind of organization. So they're not necessarily accountable to a specific organization or group of people. If we look at the bottom, we also see the author is a woman. She states she's a 20-year-old mother of 2, and that this is a blog about motherhood and parenting. So even though it touches on vaccinations, we wouldn't consider that a very reliable author. The only date we see here is a copyright date, so we don't have a date of when she got this information from, and we also, don't have any sources from where she got her information from. So even though this little blog recommends getting your vaccine, which is the same recommendation that AHS would give you, we still wouldn't consider it a good place to get your information. Yeah. Oh, let's see if my mouse works here. There we go.
And bad examples can still have valid information. It's just whether they're a reliable source or not. So opinions and just sharing your own experiences, they're totally valid experiences and opinions, but just always remember where it's coming from and just take it from a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt. So now we're going to look at a good example. So this one is from HealthLink or myhealth.alberta.ca, which is from the government of Alberta. So if we start with the D in dads, we look at the domain. We see it's a .ca like Sarah mentioned. So .ca, it can be purchased by any individual, but because it is, sorry, I'll skip down to the bottom, so it is endorsed by the government, we do find that a reputable source. So next we go on to authors. It does list specific authors here, so this information was provided by the Influenza Immunization Program as well as Alberta Health Services. For the second D in dads, the date, we see that it's very recent. So August 19th, 2016, this was either posted or it was updated. And for the last letter at sources, it doesn't provide a reference list necessarily, most likely because the information is coming from them. So again, just kind of thinking about these rules as guidelines. So even though it might not meet that like sources and has those links to peer-reviewed articles, just otherwise we can kind of deduce that it's a reputable source to get your information. All right, let's go back. All right, and so I just wanted to talk a little bit about self-care and what that means in terms of getting your influenza shot. So the definition of self-care is any intentional actions you take to take care of your physical, mental, and emotional health. So getting your influenza shot would definitely count towards contributing to your physical health. Being immunized against influenza protects you greatly from a potentially deadly virus. It reduces your risk of getting the influenza, and in the chances that you do get influenza, it greatly minimizes its effects. It won't be as severe. Plus, in protecting yourself, you protect everyone around you by contributing to herd immunity.
So where to get your influenza shot this season? There's pharmacies and physicians that offer them, so you can call your family doctor or find a pharmacy nearby and call them and see if they are giving out the vaccine. There's community flu clinics around Edmonton, and you can find those on the AHS website, when you can find one that's close to where you live. And also the University Wellness Services, they offer a influenza clinic. You do need to have a 1 card to be eligible. So it's happening next week on November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Bring your 1 card and a valid provincial healthcare card, and it's in Dinwoody Lounge. That's the 2nd floor of Sub.
Okay, so we do have a few questions for you. I'm not sure who wants to answer these, but I'll just kind of throw them out there. So one question we get a lot is, I've heard that getting the influenza shot can give you the flu. Is that something that's true, or could you maybe speak to that a bit?
Right. Okay. So you actually cannot get you cannot get influenza from the influenza shot, from either the inactivated or live vaccines that you get. We are providing the inactivated injections at our flu clinic. What it does do, and sometimes people might think they get the flu from it because it does provoke an immunity, or like an immune response from the body. So there's redness, swelling, discomfort. You can feel tired, irritable. You can sometimes get a headache or fever, and decreased nausea. Or decreased appetite or nausea, but you will not get the influenza from the influenza shot.
Awesome. All right, so another question we get a lot is, how come when I've received the influenza shot in the past, I've gotten the influenza that season anyway?
Okay, so it does take 2 weeks once you receive your immunization for you to be fully immunized, get the full effects of the vaccine. So if you're exposed to the influenza virus either right before you get your shot or in those 2 weeks, it's possible that you are going to develop influenza still. However, the symptoms will be tend to be much less. And there's also other strains that aren't contained within our vaccines. We try to give the most common that we can predict for this season that you could potentially be exposed to. However, if you do get an influenza vaccine, you tend to have milder symptoms. As well as, it's important to remember that sometimes your immune response response to the vaccine can mimic flu-like symptoms or influenza-like symptoms. However, they will be much milder than if you hadn't gotten your vaccine in the first place.
Awesome. And another question we get asked a lot is, for someone who's really afraid of needles, what are some ways that you suggest would help them calm down?
Okay, so needle phobia is definitely a common thing. We have a few different ways to maybe distract or take your mind off what's going on. The first thing I would really suggest is letting your immunizer know that you are nervous. There's really no shame in it, and every immunizer has different little tricks that they find work for them. So a few things that we've heard before, and I'm sure many of you have heard before if you've gotten your vaccine, is to maybe wiggle your toes or look away. They do allow you to maybe listen to music after you've gone through and listen to all the precautions to get informed consent. After that, you are able to put headphones in and listen to music or an audiobook. You can also bring a support person with you if you feel like that's what you need. Ultimately, we touched on self-care, and we don't want getting your influenza shot to be stressful and detrimental to your emotional self-care. So we want you to feel comfortable while you're getting immunized.
Thank you so much, Sarah, Courtney, and Erin, for sharing your knowledge about how to navigate through health information online and how to sort of find those reputable sources. That DADS acronym is awesome and can really help even outside of influenza season. I'm sure it could apply to classes where you need sources from and things like that. So just to sort of reiterate what we've talked about, you can head to Dinwoody Lounge on November 2nd, 3rd, or 4th from 9 till 3 to get your influenza shot, and all you need is your one card and your healthcare card. So we hope that this has been a nice study break for some of you, and that you also learned about some valuable tools that you can use this flu season. Thank you for tuning in and spending a little bit of your afternoon with the Healthy Campus Unit and our practicum students. And you can stay tuned on our Facebook page to see when the next installment of the Unwind Your Mind Skills series will be coming down the pipe. Thanks.